iOS 18 is dropping later this month, and with it, this brand new amazing animation when you activate Siri. It looks incredible, and I'm gonna dive in on how to create it using After Effects right now. To start off, we're gonna grab a few things from the iOS 18 and iPadOS 18 UI kit in Figma. And I already copied those over here. We just want this lock screen and we want the bezel just so that we can make our mockup look nice. We're gonna go ahead and send that to After Effects. We're gonna make sure that we set the background to black. And let's go ahead and bring this over here. And we're gonna align that to center and push it into the back. So this is gonna be our kind of mock-up area. And so let's go ahead and reveal this. This will be our iOS 18 mock-up. Okay, and this is where everything's gonna live in our mock. I'm also gonna bring in this right here. We'll scale that down. And this is a screen recording of that animation so that we can kind of color pick and just see how ours compares with our reference. So we'll just have this as our reference and we'll make it a guide layer. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is get this stroke thing down, and then we'll mess around with kind of this motion. What's happening right here when it goes around, it kind of gets a little bit thicker, a little bit brighter, and the colors kind of spin around. There's a few different ways you can do it, just like anything in After Effects. And we're gonna try to make this as simple as possible and not too heavy. Because also understanding that this is something that is in the actual device. It's made in software. And so it's not using a bunch of crazy After Effects effects and modifiers and distortions. And so we want to try to make this as simple as possible in After Effects to kind of see how close can we get it to what they have in this mock here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the composition that our lock screen came into, and we just want to go ahead and just double the size just so that we have a little bit of wiggle room. So we'll do ×2, and now we got a comp that size like this. All right, we're going to name that Siri Stroke, and let's go ahead and actually put that in here. We're going to scale it down by half. And we're going to center it. What we're first going to do is we're going to make sure that we have this stroke correct. I'm going to bring this reference in here. We're going to first make a stroke that matches the corner radius of the phone. So we're going to double click the square, the rectangle tool, and we're going to go ahead and scale that down to roughly match. And we're also going to, on the rectangle path, we're going to increase the roundness until we match more or less what we got going on here. So we'll zoom in. Want to make sure that we have a good match. Let's scale it down a little bit and we'll change that rotation again. And let's fix that roundness. And that feels pretty close. And we want to make sure that this is a stroke, not a fill. And we're just going to have it be this bright blue. Make sure that we have this shape stroke being just about the same. And let's scale down that stroke just until we have it about here. And then we're going to apply onto this Gaussian blur, and we're going to blur it out until we kind of match the blurriness of what we have going on behind it. That's pretty good, maybe about 30. This is going to be like our hard stroke. And then we have some portions of this that it starts to like bulge and kind of get a little bit thicker in some places around the stroke. So we want to mimic that. So I think the best way to do that is to duplicate this. We're going to make this kind of a softer edge. And we're going to add to this a turbulence displacement. What you're going to notice immediately is that it makes all of this stuff a little bit wonky. And that's what we want of this, the kind of like random movement all around. It's a little bit too much movement, so let's kind of fine tune that a little bit more. So we want the amount to be a lot less, maybe about 25, and the size of it. So we don't want it to be super fine. When we decrease the size, you can see right here, when I decrease the size, it gets like way fuzzy. We don't want that. We want it to be nice, gradual, smooth curves. And we want to make sure that it doesn't move around too much. And so we'll change the amount down even more, maybe to like 10. Let's go forward in time. And that's looking pretty nice. So then let's go ahead and set some keyframes. So we're going to go forward maybe 4 seconds in time. We'll change that to 1. All right. I think we could also increase the stroke a little bit more and increase the blurriness quite a bit more. So it's a bit of a softer light. Now we have this kind of like glowing edge around it. We see this moving around a little bit. Next is that we need to get these colors down. Since After Effects by default does not support a gradient along a stroke that actually like moves along the stroke, we're going to kind of hack this a little bit. So what we're going to do is duplicate this hard stroke, remove the actual stroke of it, and this is going to be our path. And then what we need to do is color pick these colors. And what I'm going to do is just have a series of circles that represent all of these colors. And so let's go ahead and make some circles. You could also do this in Figma, which might be a little bit quicker. Color picking this and making all these circles and then importing them after the fact. All right, so all of these are our colors for the gradient. We're going to go ahead and throw an adjustment layer on top of it all. And we're going to do Gaussian blur again. And we're going to blur all of this. Okay. We're going to add maybe a little bit of a glow and change these thresholds a little bit and the intensity. Just want to bump up just the nice brightness of the colors a little bit more. And the next what we need to do is actually make sure that everything follows this path correctly. The way that we're going to do that is that we are going to copy this path as a position. And so this is just the stroke that goes all the way around. We're going to convert this rectangle path to a Bezier path, throw it on a keyframe, copy that, and paste it into a position property of this first one. And now you can see that that red one goes all the way around. If we solo that, it goes all the way around and it follows that stroke. That's what we want. We also want this to loop forever. So we're just going to do loop out. And so now it will loop forever and ever and ever and ever. We're not going to worry about easing because we can do that later, but this is how it looks for right now. Very simple. And we're going to copy that position property and paste it to all of these other layers at the same time. And so now everything should be moving together. The issue now is that they're all moving in the same rate, in the same place. And so we need to offset this. And because we looped it, we can easily shift some things around. We know that red is going to stay there. Purple is going to be next. And what we're looking for now is to make sure that there's not like large gaps. And if there is, we just need to scale some things up. Because we don't want to have any weird gaps in our gradient where there's just absolutely no color. Now, if we turn our adjustment layer back on, we can see now we have this nice gradient kind of circling around. We're going to pre-comp it. Okay, so now we have this awesome gradient. So now that we have that, let's actually make our hard stroke and our soft stroke take on that gradient color. So now check this out. We're going to turn this off. And look, now we have some nice colorful gradient that is starting to match what we see in the Apple Intelligence. Next, what we need to do is let's go take this and put it in our iOS mockup so that we can matte it correctly. And let's scale this up properly so that it fits well. Let's make sure we center this. And we're going to put it underneath the bezel and we're going to crop it to the lock screen. And so already we're starting to see that we are getting this pretty close. Next thing that we want to do is slow down the timing of that actual gradient. And so let's go to this. We're going to do Command Alt T to bring up the time remap. We're going to go to 2 seconds and we're going to stretch it out. And we're going to copy this over to the other gradient so that they stay within the same time. All right. So we got the stroke down pretty well. And the next thing that we need is this little burst. That's a really nice, just like start to the whole overall animation. We have a few different elements. We have this little indicator that you're touching the lock button and then that disappears. It kind of snaps back in place as this thing bursts out. And that kind of reveals the Siri stroke actually as it does this burst across the screen. And the burst across the screen looks like it's more in a circle shape. So let's make that happen. We're going to go ahead and just duplicate the Siri stroke and we're going to call this Siri burst. Open that up. Let's first do this little shape thing. That'll be pretty easy. So that's going to be one of these things. And we're going to, ideally you would maybe make this in like Figma or Illustrator first, but I think this is pretty, be a little softer on the edges, but we're literally just going to bring it in like this and then bring it out. We'll go ahead and we'll do a position keyframe here. 1, 2, 3, 300 milliseconds forward in time. We're going to bring it up. And how long does that stay on? We can 300 milliseconds later, or very quick disappearing. Awesome. And I'm going to bring up flow to apply some easings here. So it seems like a nice standard easing coming in and then a fast out. Got it. Alrighty. So then when this happens, we're going to see this like little burst of purple and revealing it. So we're going to start with this like circle. And all we're going to do is not position, but scale. So over 500 milliseconds, it's going to cover the entire screen. And then it's going to do a fade out. 1, 2, 3, 4 to 0. So it's going to boom and fade out. And let's apply some easings to that. Move this to the top so that we have our reference. Just line that up a little bit better. Move some keyframes around, out and fade away. All right, and this is actually going to be used for this background as well as revealing the stroke. And so we're going to use that in 2 different ways. So it's going to be circle. And then what we need is basically this like purple thing here. That's basically this rounded rectangle type of shape that grows and then disappears. So what we're going to do is do a little roundy rectangle in its own layer. And let's make sure that we increase the roundness of that by a lot. Be one of these. This is also going to scale from 0 to something. It's going to start right here and basically right here. And it's going to fade out as well as kind of have like a blur out as well. We'll do standard and apply a big old blur to it. We'll name that color burst. So let's see that alongside the lock button. So this is going to come in. Now let's apply some gradients to this. So we want first this gradient to be on this color burst and then also this circle burst. Yes. And this circle burst needs to have a bunch of blur on it. A bunch. Very nice. And we don't need it to be nearly as strong. If we go back to our iOS mockup and we're going to do the Siri burst right here where the Siri stroke is. All right, let's make sure that we are tracking that only to the lock screen. And it's at this point where the Siri stroke should be on, but we want to reveal it with this burst that we're having. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that this circle burst is available. So let's go ahead and copy that over to here. Now let's move this circle burst to be right here where we were needing it. And we want it to be 100% opacity. Let's make sure that we bring it a little bit bigger. I'm gonna extend this a little bit. This is actually how we're going to reveal the Siri burst or the Siri stroke. And if we don't want yellow to be the first color that we're seeing there, we can move this forward in time so that we get that purple. And so now when this happens, it'll be that nice purple. So then let's make sure the Siri stroke is being revealed properly. You can see it's clipping out the end. So what we need to do is actually pre-comp this Siri stroke with circle mask and mask that to this. So let's see what we got so far. I mean, this is looking pretty close. And the last thing that we need is there's this warping happening where things are kind of warping to the left. So let's see if we can get that going. We're going to do that with a adjustment layer, and we're going to call this warp. I think what we're going to do is a bulge, and we're going to make this real big. We're going to offset it a little bit because it looks like in the reference, it just shifts things over so slightly to the left. Obviously our height is way too much, and it's maybe just like, and then fade off. So maybe even horizontal a little bit more. So let's add this bulge. So that happens right when it bursts right here. Okay. So we have this bulge center, and we'll keep that pretty good. We want it to increase like 0.5 and then go back to 0 while we move this slightly. And let's just do a nice standard easing, maybe taper it a little bit more. And this needs to have a more gradual ease out. All right, so let's check it out. Take a look at our reference. Looks pretty good. And here is the mock we just made. So we were able to create a very close replica of this effect using some very simple strokes. A simple hack with these shapes, tracing around the stroke layer to make this nice fluid gradient, and then using the bulge effect to get this warping effect happening. And that's it, folks. That's how you recreate the iOS 18 Siri gradient effect with the new Apple Intelligence. Next time, I'll dive in how do you take this animation and use it in your Figma mock so that you can make them come to life with your Siri interactions. Catch y'all next time.